Commander Lyra Vos stood on the grand balcony of the Human Alliance War Hall, her uniform catching the golden light of the twin suns as the crowd below roared her name. The war against the Varkai Empire had dragged on for years, but today everyone believed it was turning in humanity's favor because of her tactics. Her ships had destroyed 3 enemy strongholds in just a month. Her name was spoken with pride from the mining colonies on Mars to the ocean cities of New Europa. The people expected her to speak of victory and peace, but before she could open her mouth, a voice cut through the air, cold and commanding. It was the High Counselor of the Human Alliance, and his words froze every breath in the plaza by order of the Council. Commander Lyra Vos is hereby forbidden from using her hands, effective immediately. The crowd gasped, confusion rippling like a shockwave. Lyra blinked, certain she had heard wrong, but the guards moved instantly. 2 armored officers stepped forward. Locking a sleek black restraint around her wrists, the device pulsed with blue light, sealing her hands together in front of her. The crowd shouted questions, some in anger, some in fear, but no answers came. Her mind raced, trying to understand why. This was happening. She had committed no crime, broken no oath. The counselor's face was unreadable as he declared that Lyra would be removed from command, effective now, and reassigned to a remote asteroid station on the edge of Alliance space. With no further explanation, the balcony doors closed behind her, shutting out the noise of the people as the guards escorted her away. Her thoughts burned with a mix of rage and confusion, but deeper than that was the sting of betrayal she had given. Her life to the Alliance fought battles no one else could win, and now they had taken from her the very tools she had used to fight the war. The shuttle ride to the asteroid station was silent. Except for the low hum of the engines, the guards never spoke, their faces hard and distant through the viewport. The endless black of space stretched around them, broken only by distant stars and the faint glow of the Varkai border regions. She stared at that glow, remembering the last battle she had fought, how close she had come to losing, and how she had pulled victory from the edge using her hands to direct the fleet in ways no AI could predict. And now those hands lay bound in her lap, useless, when the shuttle docked at the asteroid station. She was met by Captain Dreven, a tall man with gray in his beard and suspicion in his eyes. He didn't salute. He simply told her the Council's orders: no weapons, no command access, and no contact with the warfront. She would live in a small quarters and take no part in military planning. He left without another word. The station itself was quiet. Almost too quiet, its crew small and wary. Most of them avoided her gaze as if afraid to be seen speaking with her. She spent the first day staring out, the narrow window in her quarters, watching the slow spin of the asteroid as it circled its faint sun. But on the second day, something strange happened. Deep in the night, a faint hum pulsed through the walls of her room, a sound that didn't match the station's normal systems. She followed it to the control bay, only to find the night shift crew asleep, slumped in their chairs. The main sensors were lit with strange readings, faint energy spikes near the asteroid, moving in patterns that didn't match any known ship signature. Her heart pounded. She tried to call the captain, but the comms were locked, her hands useless on the console. She leaned forward and began giving voice commands, but the system refused her inputs. Marked restricted by Council order it was. Then she realized this was no random energy reading. It was a Varkai reconnaissance signal. The enemy was here in the outer sectors, and no one knew except her. The restraints around her hands glowed faintly, mocking her. Every instinct told her to act, but the rules wrapped around her like chains. She returned to her quarters, her mind spinning, searching for an answer. Then as she lay awake staring at the ceiling, she smiled. For the first time since her exile, they had banned her hands. But they had not banned her mind, and she had just thought of a way to fight back. Lyra sat at the edge of her narrow bunk, staring at the faint blue light of the restraints around her wrists. The station around her hummed with the slow rhythm of machinery, but her mind was far from calm. The enemy signals she had seen the night before would not leave her thoughts. Every instinct screamed that the Varkai were probing the sector, and yet no alarms had been raised, no orders had been given, and the crew went about their duties as if nothing was wrong. She knew the council had silenced her voice. Here the comm system required manual access codes, and every interface on the station was locked from her, but Lyra was no stranger to impossible problems. She closed her eyes and began to think back to her earliest training days before she was even an officer, when she had been part of a secret program. In the early days of the war, the Human Alliance had experimented with neural interfacing, allowing commanders to connect their thoughts directly to machines. It had been dangerous, unstable, and most participants had been pulled from the project. But she had passed the trials and had been able to guide drones through battle. Without touching a control panel, she had never told anyone outside the program about her skill, but now she realized it might be her only way forward. The station's drones were small repair craft used to patch damage on the outer hull. They were not built for combat, but they had thrusters, cameras, and manipulators. If she could get into the drone control system without her hands, she might be able to scout the area and confirm the enemy presence. She spent hours in her quarters running through mental exercises, activating the parts of her mind she had once used for neural link training. It had been years since she had felt the odd sensation of pushing her thoughts outward, like fingers reaching for something unseen by the third night. She could feel faint whispers of the station's network, as if tiny threads of static were brushing against her mind on the fourth night. She made her move. The crew on night shift was minimal, and she knew their routines. She walked slowly into the drone bay, where two drones rested in their docking clamps. The interface console blinked with a locked red signal, but she didn't touch it. Instead, she stood still, closed her eyes, and pushed her thoughts forward, visualizing the drones as extensions of her own body. At first, there was only silence, then a sharp sting in the back of her skull, followed by the dizzying rush of a new perspective. The cold dark of space filled her senses, and she realized she was seeing through the drone's external cameras. She guided it clumsily at first, drifting too far left, then correcting. She kept it low near the asteroid surface to avoid station sensors. Her mind burned with the strain, but she pushed on. The strange energy readings from before were stronger. Now patterns of light flickering just beyond the asteroid's shadow, and then she saw them, 3 sleek Varkai probes half-cloaked and moving like predators. In the dark, they were scanning the asteroid, mapping it, marking it. Her pulse quickened. She knew what this meant. The Varkai were preparing a strike, and the asteroid station was their first target. She pulled the drone back into its dock, breaking the link. Her head pounded and her vision swam, but a grim satisfaction settled in her chest. She had proof now, but proof was useless if no one believed her. She tried to warn Captain Drevin the next morning, speaking of the probes and their scans, but he dismissed her immediately, claiming her information was unreliable and that the Council's orders about her hands extended to her decision-making. She left his office without another word, but inside she was already planning her next move. If the station commander would not act, she would have to prepare for the enemy herself. She began secretly modifying one of the repair drones, adding scavenged plating and a stripped-down plasma cutter from the engineering bay. She worked only at night, guiding the tools with the drone through her mind link, slowly turning the harmless machine into something that could fight. Her head ached every time she used the link, but she ignored it. She remembered the faces of the soldiers she had commanded and the civilians she had saved. She could not let the Varkai slip past unchallenged. On the 6th night, while testing the drone's movement, she noticed something unusual in the sensor feed. A faint pulse, not from the Varkai, but from somewhere deep in space. A human signal encrypted in a way she had never seen it, repeated the same phrase over and over. They banned your hands because they fear your true power. She froze, staring at the words as they pulsed in the drone's interface. It meant someone knew about her ban and about her abilities, and they were watching her from somewhere far beyond the asteroid. She did not know if it was a friend or another enemy, but one thing was certain: the war was not over, and the real fight was only beginning. Lyra could not stop hearing the strange message in her head, the words "they banned your hands because they fear your true power," repeated over and over, like a whisper that refused to fade. She sat in the dim light of her quarters staring at the restraints around her wrists, the metal warm from her skin, the blue glow casting shadows across the walls. She wanted to believe the signal had come from an ally, but experience had taught her that in war, nothing was ever that simple. She replayed. The drone's recording again, slowing down the feed. There was no source signature, no location tag, just the pulse of those words in a code. Too old for modern Alliance ships to use. That fact alone chilled her because it meant the sender had access to technology long abandoned or deliberately hidden. She thought back to her early days in the Neural Link program. The instructors had hinted that the tech was older than the war itself, a relic of deep space exploration from centuries ago. But no one had ever confirmed it. If the message was tied to that history, then someone had been watching her for a long time. Maybe since before the war began, she decided to dig into the station's archives, but doing so without her hands was nearly impossible. The terminals required manual access and retinal scans, so she turned again to the drones, moving them quietly through maintenance conduits to reach a sealed archive room on the far side of the station. The metal walls there were thick, and dust coated the door rarely opened. Inside were rows of old data cores glowing faintly with standby power. She linked into the room's terminal through the drone's interface, bypassing the station security entirely. The archives revealed fragments of reports from the first years of human expansion beyond Sol. They spoke of a failed expedition to a region called the Rift Sector, where ships had vanished without trace. Only one vessel had returned. Its crew reportedly changed in ways the Alliance could not explain, and the name of one of those crew members stopped Lyra Cold Voss, the same family name as hers. She had never known her grandparents. Her father had spoken little of them, but now she wondered if this was why the Council had always kept her under quiet watch. Her bloodline was connected to something the Alliance feared. She was still processing this when an alarm blared through the station, loud enough to rattle the walls. She cut the drone feed and looked out the narrow viewport. In her quarters, faint shadows moved across the stars, growing larger with every second. The Varkai fleet had arrived, their ships sleek and angular, sliding out from cloaked positions like predators emerging from the dark. The station scrambled to battle readiness, but it was obvious they were unprepared. This was a forward outpost with minimal weapons, nothing that could hold off a fleet. Lyra moved fast, reaching the drone bay and linking to her modified unit. Her mind slid into the machine's frame, and she guided it out into space, weaving between the enemy ships to gather intel. The Varkai were not attacking, yet they were scanning the station just as their probes had done days earlier. She knew this meant one thing: they were marking the target for a larger strike force. As she maneuvered the drone closer, she caught sight of something unexpected. A single Varkai ship broadcasting a low signal, not on their normal channels. It was sending something directly toward the station. She traced the signal's path, and to her shock, it was aimed at her quarters. She returned the drone to dock and hurried back, only to find her door already open. A tall figure in dark armor stood inside his form, shimmering as the cloak field faded. It was a Varkai assassin, his twin blades glowing faintly in the dim light. Her hands were bound. She had no weapon, but she did not need one. She triggered the voice command for her combat drone. It tore through the air from the bay, slamming into the assassin before he could move. The fight was brutal. The drone's plasma cutter slicing through the alien's weapon arm, sparks showering the walls. The assassin moved like a shadow, striking back hard enough to dent the drone's plating. But Lyra's focus was unshakable. Every movement of the machine matched the sharp precision of her mind, until finally the alien fell. The blue light of his armor fading, she stood in the sudden silence, breathing hard, her wrists aching in their restraints. She knew this was no random attack. The Varkai knew exactly where she was, and they wanted her gone before the real strike began. Someone inside the Alliance had told them she was here, and that meant her enemies were not only in the blackness of space, they were also wearing the same uniform she once served. The body of the Varkai assassin lay still on the cold floor of Lyra's quarters, the dim blue light from her restraints casting strange shadows across his armor. Her heart was still, pounding, but her mind was already moving faster than fear. She had confirmation. Now the Varkai knew exactly where she was, and that could only mean one thing. Someone in the Alliance had given them her location. This was not just an enemy attack. This was a coordinated attempt to erase her quietly before she could interfere with whatever plans were unfolding out there. She could not wait for Captain Draven or the Council to make a move. They would either keep her locked up or hand her over. To the Varkai, she had only one option: prepare her own defense and make sure she could strike. First, she went to the drone bay that night, moving silently through the empty corridors, the hum of the station's life support systems, the only sound. Her modified drone waited in the shadows of its docking clamp, scarred from the fight with the assassin, but still functional. She linked to it immediately, the rush of connection flooding her senses like stepping into another body. She guided it to the maintenance levels where she had hidden scavenged parts over the past few nights, scrap armor panels, stripped down shield emitters, and an old plasma turret that had been left for disposal. The turret was heavy, awkward to attach, and overloaded. The drone's systems, but she forced her mind to adapt balancing power between movement and weapon function until the machine responded like an extension of herself. She tested the upgrades in a dark section of the asteroid's surface, firing the plasma turret into the empty blackness, each burst lighting up the barren rocks in eerie flashes. The recoil nearly spun the drone out of control, but with practice she steadied it. The weapon could fire only a few shots before overheating, but it was enough to cripple a small Varkai craft or disable their scanners by the fourth night. She had 2 combat drones ready, one built for speed and reconnaissance, the other for direct fire support. The strain of controlling them both at once was almost unbearable. Her head ached, her vision blurred, but she refused to stop. She remembered her mother's words from long ago. Hands are just tools. The real weapon is here. And she tapped her forehead with a faint smile. Those words had been true, even before the war, but now they were her lifeline. The next morning she received a summons from Captain Draven. His face was harder than usual as he told her the Council had reviewed her recent behavior. They accused her of tampering with station systems and unauthorized drone activity. She was to be confined to her quarters under guard until further transport arrived. Her stomach tightened. Transport meant only one thing: she was being removed from the station, probably to some secure facility, where her voice would never be heard again. She nodded calmly, but inside her decision was already made. She would not be here when the transport arrived that night. She used the recon drone to scan the edges of the sector. The enemy fleet was still, holding position, but the formation had shifted slightly. Several ships had moved toward a point just beyond sensor range. She followed, and there in the darkness she saw them. The outlines of massive carriers, each large enough to carry hundreds of assault craft. The real strike force waiting for the signal to move. Her blood ran cold. Earth was within striking distance, and the station was the first obstacle in their path. She pulled the drone back quickly and began preparing both combat units. For launch, every part of her mind screamed with urgency. She did not know if she could hold off an entire fleet, but she could at least delay them long enough to send a warning to someone, anyone who would listen. Her plan was simple: strike the enemy. Ships, before they could cloak again, cripple their scanners and disrupt their formation. Long enough to buy Earth a chance to prepare, the risk was almost certain: death. But the thought of doing nothing was worse. She was in the middle of finalizing the drone command protocols when the recon unit picked up movement from the enemy line. A smaller Varkai ship was breaking formation and heading directly toward the station, its engines running, hot weapons active. It was not part of the main attack. This was a surgical strike aimed at the station itself, and it was moving fast. She launched both drones without hesitation, the link pulling at her mind like a storm threatening to rip her apart. But she gritted her teeth and pushed forward. The recon unit sped ahead, cutting through the void toward the incoming threat, while the heavy drone took a flanking route, skimming close to the asteroid's surface. The enemy ship began charging its forward guns, targeting the station's weak outer hull. Sections the recon drone dove in, close, strafing its sensor arrays with quick bursts. The heavy drone followed a moment later, firing the plasma turret directly into the ship's weapons pod. The impact ripped through the plating, sending sparks and molten fragments spiraling into space. The Varkai vessel reeled but recovered quickly, spinning to fire on the drones. Lyra fought to keep them moving faster than the tracking systems could lock the strain on her mind building until she thought. The alarms screamed through the asteroid station, drowning the air in a piercing red glow as Lyra staggered back from the drone controls, her temples throbbing with the deep ache of overuse. She could feel her pulse in her skull. But there was no time to rest. The recon drone's feed showed the enemy fleet emerging from the dark like predators breaking from shadow, dozens of sleek Varkai warships forming a perfect spearhead aimed directly at the station. Their hulls shimmered with cloaking, residue fading away to reveal black armor lined with pale blue light weapons ports opening like the eyes of some ancient beast. Captain Dreven's voice thundered over the comm ordering battle stations, but Lyra knew it was useless. The asteroid outpost had no heavy weapons, no shield system strong enough to withstand what was coming. This place was built for observation, not war. The Council had left it exposed, and now the price for that would be paid in blood. The thought burned through her mind as she launched both combat drones into the void, her consciousness splitting between them, one sliding into a wide arc to flank the enemy formation, the other racing straight ahead toward the lead ship. The sensation was dizzying, like trying to run in two different directions at once, but her focus held because she had no choice. The first exchange came fast. The Varkai unleashed a wave of plasma fire that shredded one of the station's sensor towers, debris tumbling away into space. The station's few defense turrets spat weak streams of light, barely scratching the enemy hulls. Lyra's heavy drone hit the lead ship hard, its plasma cannon punching a molten scar into its forward armor before darting away under return fire. The recon unit weaved between incoming blasts, transmitting everything to her neural feed, every angle, every opening she could exploit. Her breath came ragged, her muscles rigid though she wasn't moving a finger. The strain of controlling two machines at once was burning her mind like fire. She pushed it down and focused on what mattered, slowing them, buying time, sending a warning to Earth. She set the recon drone to beam a distress signal on every frequency, old and new alliance, and non-alliance anything that might reach someone beyond this doomed station. The heavy drone tore through the flank of a second ship, forcing it to break formation. But for everyone, she slowed three more. Advanced their weapons, lighting up the asteroids. Surface like a storm tearing through night. The station shook violently, the impact knocking her to her knees. She tasted iron and realized she'd bitten her tongue. Dreven's voice came again, but this time it was closer. He burst into the drone, bay eyes wide with shock at what she was doing, and for a moment she thought he would stop her instead. He hesitated, watching the feed on the wall screens, seeing her drones tear at the enemy with precision and speed. No AI could match. His jaw tightened, and he simply said, "Keep going." Voss the Varkai changed tactics, sending smaller strike craft ahead, fast, agile killers designed to slip past defenses and tear open critical systems. She met them head-on, the heavy drone absorbing fire while the recon unit darted behind them, cutting at engines and weapon pods. The fight was brutal in seconds. Her heavy drone took a direct hit, the shockwave ripping through her mind like a spike of ice. She gasped, nearly blacking out, but she forced the drone onward, ramming it into one of the enemy craft. The explosion was blinding, and she felt the link sever violently, leaving a cold emptiness in her mind. The recon drone was all she had left now, and she pushed it harder than she thought possible, darting between enemy ships drawing their fire away from the station's vulnerable points. The distress signal was still broadcasting, but she had no idea if anyone was hearing it, and the enemy numbers were overwhelming. They began to circle the station, cutting off every escape vector, tightening their noose around the asteroid like a predator coiling for the kill. Then, without warning, the recon drone's sensors flared with readings that didn't match anything in Varkai design or human technology. Massive gravitational disturbance rolled through the sector, bending the light of distant stars, a ripple in space itself. The enemy ships hesitated, breaking formation for the first time, and Lyra used the gap to pull her drone back toward the station. She switched its feed to long range, and what she saw made her heart stop. A colossal ship was emerging from hyperspace, dwarfing even the Varkai carriers, its hull black as obsidian with lines of silver light running like veins across its surface. No markings, no flag, no alliance codes, no Varkai signal. This was something else entirely. The station's sensors struggled to lock onto it as if it existed only half in real space. Lyra's breath caught because whatever this was, it had not come. By accident, it had come here to this battle to her. The colossal ship hung in the darkness like a shadow carved from the void, its surface pulsing with silver veins of light that moved as if alive. The Varkai fleet held its position, weapons still, aimed at the asteroid station, but no one fired, as if both sides understood instinctively that this new arrival changed everything. Lyra's recon drone transmitted every detail to her neural feed, but even through the cold precision of sensor data, she felt something deeper, an almost human presence brushing against her thoughts, a voice without sound, a thought without words, reaching into her mind as if testing her. The sensation made her shiver. She had felt neural links before, but nothing like this. This was not a machine connection. This was direct mind to mind. She tightened her focus, and in that instant, she saw flashes not of the present, but of the past. Ancient human ships gliding through uncharted galaxies, fleets commanded without, hands or consoles, pure thought guiding steel. These were the early explorers, the ones the Alliance had erased from history, and among them was the ship before her. The message came without language, but she understood it all the same, and offered join. Us stand where few have stood, and the war will end the cost, leave your home forever. She understood now why the Council had banned her hands, why they had exiled her, why the Varkai had hunted her. She was the living remnant of an old truth, a truth that humans could command the stars with their minds alone, and that truth scared everyone who wanted to control the galaxy. The Varkai fleet began to scatter, their formation breaking as the great black ship's silver veins flared brighter. The strange vessel made no visible attack, but the enemy ships reacted as if under siege hulls, shuddering shields, flickering engines failing one by one. They turned and fled into the dark, their cloaks sparking as they vanished the asteroid stations. Crew erupted in cheers over the calm, but Lyra did not join them. Her eyes were fixed on the silver-lit giant, and the way its presence seemed to press against her thoughts again, this time sharper, more insistent. The choice it offered had not faded. The war could end here if she accepted, but she would be leaving behind everything: her home, her crew, her world. Draven appeared at her side, watching the feed, his voice low and certain when he said, "You know you can't stay, they'll never let you. Go back to command. You'll disappear one way or another." His words were not cruel, just true. She met his gaze and for a moment saw respect there, the kind reserved for those who had already crossed the point of no return. She turned back to the console and gave the mental command to launch her last remaining drone. It drifted toward the great ship, and the silver veins along its hull brightened in welcome. As it drew close, she sent one last burst through the station's comms, a tight beam. Message carrying every detail of the Varkai's hidden fleet locations, attack plans, and weaknesses she had learned since her exile. The data shot toward Earth faster than light, and she knew it would reach someone willing to act. She felt the neural Link with her drone stretch then dissolve, replaced by something much larger, her awareness expanding until she could sense the vast mind of the silver-lit ship surrounding hers, not hostile, not consuming, but inviting her to become part of something. Beyond the limits of flesh, the restraints around her wrists dissolved into nothing, the metal falling away as dust. She raised her hands for the first time in weeks, but felt no need to move them. The ship's systems responded to her thoughts alone. The asteroid station was growing smaller now, drifting away behind her as the great ship turned toward the unknown stars. She did not look back. There was no point. The voice in her mind was no longer a whisper, but a steady presence, a companion on, a road that would never end. She knew wars would come again somewhere in the galaxy, and when they did, she would be there not as a commander of the Alliance or as an exile, but as something new, something older than the war itself, as the ship slid. Into hyperspace, the stars stretched into silver lines, and she let herself speak one last thought into the silence. They took my hands, I gave them the future.